With the breaking development that singer David has now been arrested in connection with the alleged murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez and the release of his attorney's new statement, we have a ton of legal questions we need to answer. Why wasn't he charged yet? He's only been arrested. Why is there a dispute over cause of death? Is there a weakness in this case? What was the evidence LAPD had to make this arrest? So many questions. I'm going to be breaking it down with renowned celebrity criminal defense attorney Bradford Cohen. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, real quick before we jump into all of this, we have this app, this partner that I think you're going to love. It's called Upside. Upside gets you cash back, extra cash back on everyday purchases like gas, groceries, takeout. So here's what you do. You download Upside for free. You claim an offer at one of their 100,000 plus locations. You pay like normal with your card. You verify the purchase, and just like that, money back. So say I need to get gas or I want takeout one night, I'll search for Upside offers first, and after I spend, money appears in my app that I can transfer right into my bank account. And Upside's frequent users earn an average of $254 back a year. So to start getting your cash back, click the link in the description or scan the QR code, but make sure to use promo code SIDEBAR because you get an extra 25 cents bonus on every gallon on your first tank of gas. After 7 months, 21-year-old David Anthony Burke, David, the singer, has been arrested for the alleged murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And look, while my colleague, Chris Stewart, on the case, broke down the breaking news of David's arrest last night, I was on News Nation, I was hosting my show, I couldn't get to it, I apologize. There is a lot more that we need to break down today. There is a lot more that has come out since that arrest. And there's a lot of legal questions we need to make sense of. I mean, I'm made of legal questions right now. Why wasn't he indicted? Why was he just arrested? Meaning he was arrested for suspicion of murder, but he hasn't been charged. Wasn't there a grand jury hearing evidence? Did the LA District Attorney's Office know the LAPD was going to make an arrest? What happens now in terms of charging? Is this a sign the case may not be strong? Are there cooperating witnesses? His attorney's statement is very interesting, particularly when they talk about cause of death. But let me just start with this, okay? So this is from the LAPD, their PIO. Quote, detectives from the Los Angeles Police Department Robbery Homicide Division have arrested David Burke, a 21-year-old resident of Los Angeles, for the murder of Celeste Rivas. Burke is being held without bail. The case will be presented to the district attorney's office on Monday for filing consideration. Now, this came in from the LA County District Attorney's Office. Good evening. Our office is aware of the arrest of David Anthony Burke by the Los Angeles Police Department. The case is expected to be presented to the Major Crimes Division, at which point prosecutors will review the facts and evidence to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to file charges. At this time, additional information is not available. We will share an update on Monday once a filing decision has been made. And then this came in late last night. Good evening. The individual mentioned is still in LAPD custody. You may reach out to the district attorney's office once the case has been presented to them. So to be clear, David has been arrested, but he hasn't been officially charged with a crime. And by the way, talk about his arrest. What a scene it was. According to NBC News, David was arrested shortly after 4:30 p.m. at a house in the Hollywood Hills located on Marmont Avenue. I mean, we hadn't heard publicly from David in months. We hadn't seen David publicly in months. He was on his Withered tour when Celeste's body was found, and that tour was canceled. Future dates were canceled. And then he went radio silent. LAPD Captain Scott Williams told the outlet, quote, we did the best we can to keep tabs on him, but once we developed probable cause to arrest him for murder, then we were on him pretty diligently. And he told the California Post they had a probable cause warrant with them when they made the arrest. And there are photos of armed police outside this residence making the arrest. Per reporting from the California Post, David appears to be in handcuffs. He's led away. A neighbor apparently told the outlet that she saw, quote, so many cops on this street that one of them took to a loudspeaker shouting, surrender. This brings me now to David's attorney's statement. So this is from Blair Burke, Marilyn Bednarski, and Regina Peter. Let us be clear, the actual evidence in this case will show that David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and he was not the cause of her death. There has been no indictment returned by any grand jury in this case, and no criminal complaint filed. David has only been detained under suspicion. We will vigorously defend David's innocence. So that's right, he's innocent until proven guilty. And by the way, that was their first public statement on this case after so many months. And to put this into context, I said 7 months. Remember when I said 7 months? It was back on September 8th when her decomposed body was found in the trunk of a Tesla, reportedly belonging to the romantic homicide singer. And while not officially confirmed by investigators, there has long been speculation and reports that Celeste and David were romantically involved. But remember, there have been no arrests, there have been no charges up until yesterday. That was the first real arrest in connection with the alleged murder of Celeste. Now, Celeste was reported missing from Lake Elsinore back in 2024. This is about 75 miles away from LA. We believe the last reported photo of her was from early 2025. We learned through court filings that Celeste had been dismembered, that her body parts were put in bags. But to be clear, no official cause of death has been revealed. Why? Because the ME's records, the medical examiner's records, were sealed. They were sealed by a court based on a request from the LAPD, which has only added to the speculation, the confusion, the frustration in this case. And those same filings indicated that David was a target in this murder investigation, which is interesting because at one point, police indicated there may not even be a crime outside concealment of Celeste's body. So something changed. We heard reporting, particularly from TMZ, that a grand jury had been impaneled out in LA on this case. There was back and forth about whether it was a grand jury that could return an indictment or merely it was an investigative grand jury that hears evidence, locks in testimony. And based on what just happened, David being arrested but not charged, isn't that telling? And remember, his purported friend, Neil Langston, was arrested for allegedly failing to appear as a witness, reportedly brought back to LA to testify in a criminal proceeding. We presume it was this grand jury. So as you can see, there are a lot of legal questions about the case, the evidence, the defenses, whether he's actually going to be charged, how he's going to be charged, and that's what I want to talk about. So I want to bring in Bradford Cohen, celebrity criminal defense attorney, friend of the show, friend of mine. So good to see you. I'm very, very confused. Look, I'm confused because he was arrested and not charged. He was arrested, what I think was via a complaint, right? They got him through a probable cause warrant. I thought there was a grand jury that was being impaneled to present an indictment. So the way I understand it is now he's arrested. They're sending it back to the DA's office for filing consideration. And they already have the case? Weren't they already presenting evidence to the grand jury? I'm confused what's going on here.
So I'm confused as well because I thought they were presenting evidence to a grand jury this whole time. I thought that's what was taking so long because they were determining how the cause of death happened, what the evidence was. And it was unusual because it's a Tesla. And usually Tesla has audio and video attached to their car. So you would be able to see who was putting what in where or when it happened and when it was parked. The whole thing was very unusual the way it developed and then how long it took. And then to culminate in an arrest with a complaint seems unbelievably weird because now it's going back to the DA's office who already knows all about this case for filing consideration. So I think that there's something strange going on. It could be, and I'm just spitballing, is a CYA type situation where it could be that the LAPD has a different point of view than the state attorney's office. And now they made the arrest. Now they're putting the onus on the state attorney's office to now say, listen, there's not enough evidence there. So sometimes this happens where the police feel, listen, there's enough. We're making an arrest. The state attorney's office says, don't make an arrest. There's not enough. And the policing agency just makes the arrest and says, good, now you guys can go to the press and tell them there's not enough evidence here to charge this guy where it's his Tesla, it's, 3 blocks from his house, it's his ex-girlfriend, she's 15 years old, and she's found dismembered. Now you go to the press and say there's not enough evidence to charge.
You heard the statements, right? You heard the statements last night. Did it seem to you that the DA's office wasn't aware that the LAPD was going to arrest him? Because they're like, it kind of felt like we were made aware of this. We're aware of what happened. It didn't seem like it was a joint operation that they were. I mean, I could be speculating, but that's what it seemed like to me.
I feel like you hit the nail on the head. That's why I'm saying, like, the only thing I can in this situation is that there is not a meeting of the mind in terms of that they have enough evidence to charge this young man. And if they don't have enough evidence, or the state feels they don't, but the LAPD feels they do, like I said, the LAPD never wants to look stupid, and they do look stupid where it feels like there's a lot of evidence here that points to this gentleman, and they're not making an arrest, and it's been 6 months, it's been 8 months. So that's why now they can say, listen, good, here's the state attorney. You
Right.
say that there's
Well,
not evidence.
let me ask you this. Tell me if any of these scenarios could be true. One, the grand jury's still hearing evidence and the LAPD just decided to arrest them while the grand jury's still hearing evidence. B, grand jury came back and said no to an indictment, which would be kind of a rare thing because of the standard to get a grand jury indictment that there's probable cause was very low. So it's maybe the grand jury said no, or maybe this was just a grand jury that was impaneled like an investigative grand jury, hear evidence, lock in testimony, and then move forward from there. Any of those possibilities realistic?
I think the third one's less likely, but it could be. But generally speaking, the first two are probably more likely scenario where the grand jury could be still hearing evidence, but the LAPD felt they weren't moving fast enough, so they made an arrest. There could be that they felt that he was going to flee. You know, it could be that they had information he was leaving the country and they wanted to lock him down because
even if you hear the commander, like it seems like they had eyes on him based on the reporting that they knew where he was in the Hollywood Hills.
I would imagine that they knew where every movement that he made was. So generally, I'll tell you how this generally goes. Generally, this goes where if the state or the feds aren't ready to indict, but they feel there's a flight risk, they may make the arrest and then, figure it out. Let's see how it all goes. That's kind of generally how this works when you see this scenario. This is a little bit different because the kid was out of the country, in the country. They've been keeping eyes on him. He knows an investigation is going on. Any minute this kid could have taken off, but he didn't. And I think the LAPD were keeping tabs on him. So that is the least likely situation that I see, but it could have been that. I think more than likely it was that the LAPD feels they have enough evidence and the state does not feel they have enough evidence, and they were tired of waiting and they just made the arrest.
Okay. What's that disconnect? Why might there be a problem in this case? I mean, I'll give you an example. It was reported that Neil Langston, David's purported friend, testified for only 30 to 40 minutes. And this was believed that he was somebody who was important to this case, that allegedly was there, that maybe had a role in this. And allegedly he was arrested for failing to appear. He was arrested in Montana, brought back. So you look at something like that, you're like, well, maybe he didn't give them what they needed. Maybe he pled the fifth. You think about David's defense attorneys who's saying he's not the cause of death. Is there something seriously lacking in this case from an evidentiary point of view?
Oh, I've said this from the jump. Like everything points to a certain person or certain persons. The problem that you have is that, and I said this originally, is it a murder case because they cannot determine the cause of death? Let's say this young lady died from an OD or died from something else, and we don't know at this point how she died. And then after she died, obviously somebody or someone freaks out. They don't know what to do. There's a dead body in the house, puts it in the trunk, tries to forget about it, things of that nature. That's not a murder case, right? That is a illegal disposing of a body. There's other charges that could be, filed on that. Originally, I thought that's where they were going with this, that it wasn't going to be a murder charge because they could not prove the cause of death. I've read some places online that they say, no, now we can prove the cause of death. I don't know how. It's been like 6 or 8 months and they were trying to figure out what the cause of death was. So I think that is a very large hole in a case where you're charging a murder if you cannot figure out how the person died. So if you have no evidence on how the person died, but you have evidence maybe that the body was disposed of in an illegal way, you have a different charge, but you don't have a murder charge. So I think that's the big hole in this case, is no one knows how she died, when she died, because they're trying to determine it, but it's very difficult. And Dr. Bodden did some reports on how bodies decompose and trying to figure out, when someone died. What lends itself to the confusion is it was in the trunk of a car, the front trunk of the car. it's 90 degrees out, 85 degrees out. We don't know what the temperatures were, if the humidity got in there. There's a lot of things that
And
take place
dismembered. And
yeah, and
dismembered.
dismember.
To go back to this for a second, what is happening Monday now? So they present it to the DA's office. Does the DA, within a few hours, say, we think there's enough? And then they present it in front of a judge for a preliminary hearing where it's not in front of a grand jury, and it's a different kind of way to present evidence to say there's probable cause. The judge determines if there's probable cause to support the charges, and that's how you move forward. Or do they go back to a grand jury? I mean, what are we expecting now Monday into next week?
So I think that at this point, their hands may be tied and they might have to go for a preliminary hearing in front of a judge, a probable cause hearing in front of a judge, if they're going to make that determination. I think between then and now, the defense attorneys will be calling. I'm sure they've already been in contact with the state attorney's office, and they're going to say, like, what are we doing here? This kid should be out. Like, I don't know what the grand jury's doing, but like, how are we proceeding with the case? And I think the state will give them an idea of how they're going to proceed. If a grand jury was already impaneled and they're hearing the evidence and now this guy's arrested, they could still try. And I mean, there's different laws here. There could be speedy rules that come into play. That's why generally you don't make an arrest before you're ready to, right? Because if the demand's speedy, a speedy trial, and you have to be brought to trial within a certain period of time in every state, you could be in real trouble if you're not ready to go to trial. And they might not be ready to go to trial because they still haven't gotten all the evidence that they want to proceed. So my guess is their hands are tied right now. They're going to have to make a decision of how to move forward. I'm not sure what they're going to decide. My guess would be a probable cause hearing in front of a judge. And then now they're laying the blame off to the judge to say, well, the judge didn't find probable cause. Like, we presented all the evidence, judge didn't find probable cause. It's not us who didn't want to file the charges. It's now the judge. Everyone in these cases, whenever there's some stuff flying around, right, they try to cover themselves any way they can. So the LAPD is covering themselves by arresting them. The state will now cover themselves by saying, well, we filed all the evidence and we did everything we did, but the judge didn't find it, or the grand jury didn't come back with an indictment. That's how they keep laying the blame off on other people for shoddy investigations.
Are we going to learn her cause of death? Because I wonder, now that there's been an arrest and now that we're talking about the presentation of evidence, possibly more in a public forum, are the records, remember the ME's records were sealed, are they going to be unsealed and we'll learn what authorities believe her cause of death is?
So I think if you're going to go to a probable cause hearing, you're going to have to hear what the cause of death is. There's no way around it. So you can't go to a probable cause hearing and say, Judge, we're still trying to figure out how she died, but we're charging him with the murder. It doesn't work. So unless they know the cause of death and they're ready to present the cause of death in front of either a grand jury or a judge or someone, this case goes nowhere. So yes, I think that if the case does go forward, we will learn the cause of death at either a probable cause determination or after an indictment comes down.
What about the probable cause warrant that was used to secure the arrest? Is there a way that can be made public?
Sure. So the probable cause that for the arrest warrant itself, once they make I don't think anyone will get it prior. Well, they may, in this day and age, who knows who gets it, but legally, I don't think they will get it prior to a determination of the arrest on whether it was a good arrest. They'll file some motions and things of that nature. And then within, a week, maybe they will make that arrest warrant public. But generally speaking, before they have that probable cause hearing, before there's a determination by the state, that arrest warrant usually doesn't get out into the public for, until that time period. Now, again, in today's day and age, any clerk under the sun, is trying to make a little side money, might, all of a sudden that might go out. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But sooner or later, we're going to learn the cause of death. It can't be hidden.
What do you make of the fact no other defendants were arrested?
I think it's unusual because something like this usually is not carried off by one person, especially where there's dismemberment. You got to carry a body into a trunk of a car. You got to drive the car somewhere. You got to get back to your house, or however you're going to get back to your house. Generally, there's more than one. So it's kind of unusual that there'd only be one person charged in this, but it could be because the evidence is only linking it to that one person. I don't know if they got video from the Tesla They haven't discussed video from the Tesla, but my guess would be if there is video of this gentleman driving that Tesla to this location, even if there's no video of him actually putting something in the trunk, if there's video of him driving the Tesla to a certain location, leaving it there, and then getting home, walking home, or taking an Uber, or however he got home, then he would be the only one that would be linked to that Tesla. But like I said, there's a large gap in evidence here that we have not seen, we have not heard.
Or there's immunity agreements. There's people who are testifying against him.
There could be immunity agreements. Generally, when it comes to a murder case, if you're assisting in the murder, it's like a Sammy the Bull Gravano situation. It depends how badly they want the person that they target, right? So like the government can overlook a lot of bad deeds, and the state can look over a lot of bad deeds if they really want that guy at the end. And if they want David as badly as we think they want David, yes, they could have offered some sort of immunity, or maybe an early sealed plea on something lesser, like disposal of a body, and someone took a plea, but it's sealed, and we don't know about that plea until after, if David gets charged.
Okay, so what about the idea of where the defense attorneys will go with this? You saw the arrest, right? It seemed they went in, guns, armored. There was reporting the idea that a lot of police showed up, apparently knew where he was. How does a defense attorney pick apart the actual arrest of David and maybe the probable cause warrant there? Talk to me about that.
So a couple things. First of all, I always find it unusual and disturbing when you have a defense attorney, case been going on for 6 months. This is why I don't think the state agreed with it. The state would have called the defense attorney and said, "Hey, man, you got to bring him in, and you got 2 hours to bring him in. If you don't bring him in, we already know where he is. We're going to pick him up. It's going to be ugly, et cetera, et cetera." Instead of putting SWAT officers at risk, other officers at risk, and going into a house with guns drawn and things of that nature, that's always a risk. No matter who you're arresting, no matter what type of situation, it's not a good idea. It's better to avoid that. So that first part tells me that I think the state didn't know this was going on, because if the state was involved, they would have been involved with the defense attorney. They would have pulled the kid out, and they would have, I think, turned him in that way. That's number one. Number two is, if the defense is like me, I'd be attacking exactly what every, I think, defense attorney sees in this case, is the lack of evidence. Where is the actual evidence of that it was a murder? Where is the actual evidence that ties him to the scene, other than it's his car and it's 3 blocks away from his house? It seemed like there was 5 people or 4 people in the house at all times. And most of these entertainers, I represent a lot of entertainers. Most of these entertainers have like entourages with them. They have, at any given time, there's 4 to 6 people in a house, and they're all hanging out, playing 2K, whatever they're doing. Everybody is in the house at one point. So it's like, where is the evidence that we need to see to say, yes, this is the guy, and it's the only guy, and we're arresting him for this murder? That's what is lacking here. Now, the defense attorneys may know more than we know, because they've been involved in the case and they've been seeing it develop. Who knows? But I would attack it right from jump. This case has been 6 to 8 months old. I don't even know if it's older than that. Kid went nowhere. Kid's never left the country and never came back. He knew that he was under investigation. There was reports of it. So even for a bond hearing, like, where's he going? He's not going anywhere. Like, we know that. And then for a danger to society, like, how often were you watching him for the past 8 months? You're letting this guy, if you think he's a murderer, you're letting him walk the streets of LA without keeping an eye on him 24/7. There's just so much there on this case to defend at this point, because we don't know a lot, that I don't see where this case goes to an indictment.
And talking indictment, if the goal was to charge him, if the goal is to arrest him, charge him, like you said, maybe keep him in custody, no other charges, right? There was nothing about the concealment or the dismemberment of the body.
Right.
Nothing also about him having allegedly a relationship with a minor, right? How come none of those charges?
Again, it's so baffling. Like, I don't know if LAPD had the permission or the authority from the state, which they don't need to have. I'm not saying they have to have it, But generally, when they're getting along, they coordinate these things and they say, like, here's the charges that you should hit them with. An alleged, relationship with an underage individual, the dismemberment of a body, the disposal of a body, all these other things that they would have tacked on to give us an idea what's going on, number one. And number two is to make sure he doesn't get out on bond. Here's a litany of other charges, Judge. Like, this guy is a danger. He shouldn't get out on bond. That's what they should have done. My suspicion is, like I said, quite often you find in a lot of these different areas, LA is one of them, you'll find that the chief of police does not have the same view of different crimes with the state attorney of that area. And you find that in a lot of different areas. Orlando was one where, the prosecutor didn't get along with the sheriff. Sheriff was a real, gung-ho guy on crime, and the individual in the office in Orlando wasn't, or Tampa, wasn't as gung-ho. And you see that quite often. Now, how does that get resolved? The sheriff keeps arresting, and the state either dismisses the charges or says, we're not filing, we're not going to file on marijuana charges. And the sheriff says, I don't care, I'm still arresting people. As long as it's illegal, I'm still making the arrest. So let the state dismiss the charges. So you see that quite often in different areas, especially now. You used to never see it. But
Right.
Now, where I think politics play a bigger role in how crimes are charged and who charges them, I think you're seeing that more often, where a sheriff does not get along with a state attorney in that area.
Okay, let's see what happens next week. Hopefully we get more answers come next week.
It's really interesting how this takes place.
It really is. Bradford Cohen, good seeing you, my friend. Thanks for trying to clear it up for us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody.